I now call to order this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. It is February 1, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Ms. Allard. Here. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Zolotel.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Mr. Perez-Verdia.
Here.
And I understand Ms. Quinn Davidson is excused.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chief Curl, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Rivera, would you read the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you. We do not have any minutes of the previous meeting, so we will move on to the mayor's report. Mayor Bronson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. As everyone knows, Chief McCoy, Ken McCoy, is retired, and our new Chief of Police is Mike Curl. I have full faith and confidence in Chief Curl to keep our city safe and lead our great men and women at APD. Mike Curl's 25 years of service to Anchorage is a testament to his commitment to our city. His qualifications, career experience, and dedication to the force speaks for itself. I look forward to his swearing-in ceremony tomorrow. Next week, my team and I are headed to Juneau to share our legislative program with the legislature and the governor. As the port is our #1 priority and largest capital request of the state, this will be our primary topic of discussion with lawmakers. We know $600 million is a tremendous lift, but it is essential to the state. It is essential that the state join us in this effort, as the port impacts nearly every Alaskan across our state. I recently penned an opinion piece that went statewide, as I want Alaskans to understand how crucial fixing the port is and why Anchorage is asking the state for $600 million. We need one seismically resilient cargo dock to achieve food security for our state. We don't have that right now. $600 million gets us there through the construction of one seismically resilient cargo dock. I thank the Assembly for their support in providing a unified front for the port project. We'll provide an update on this trip when we return. February is Black History Month in America. I've issued a proclamation declaring Black History Month in Anchorage. Throughout February, my office will be engaged in a variety of events to honor Black History Month and celebrate the accomplishment of Black Americans. We're planning roundtables with African American residents and business owners, a workforce development job fair featuring local employers, and a series of Black History Month public discussions held over Zoom. Today, I also announced the kickoff of the Mayor High School Mentorship Program. This program will be available to all high school juniors and seniors to expose our city's youth to their local government. Dr. King once said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." That's why I want to provide our next generation an opportunity to learn and be part of their local government. Everyone can do something. Dr. King said everybody can be great because everybody can serve. I want to thank the members of the public for being here tonight. Your presence and attention to the matters of our city is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Bronson. Welcome to all the members of the public here tonight for being here, whether you're in person or joining us online. Please note that we're in a state of high community transmission for COVID-19 and that individuals present are requested to wear face coverings. Masks are available near the entrance to the chambers. The Assembly COVID-19 mitigation plan for the chambers limits capacity in the chambers to no more than 125 people, including media. Assembly leadership is monitoring the situation and may modify the mitigation plan in the future. As has been noted by Mayor Bronson, today marks the start of Black History Month, and a resolution recognizing and celebrating February 2022 as Black History Month is on the consent agenda for tonight. The resolution acknowledges the achievements, contributions, history, inclusiveness, and diversity of the Black community. We are very fortunate to be able to kick off the start of Black History Month here tonight with a program sponsored by the Alaska Black Caucus. It's my intent that the program, which includes a live performance, will start around 6 p.m. Heartfelt thanks to the Alaska Black Caucus members for their work in putting this program together for our community. Ballot tracking will be provided for the April 5, 2022 regular municipal election. Registered voters are encouraged to sign up at anchoragevotes.com to receive email, text, or voicemail alerts about the status of your ballot. Assembly leadership is committed to ensuring that this April's election, like prior elections, is fair, accurate, transparent, and accessible. A reminder that we are here to do the municipality's business, and I ask everyone to please help create a climate of respect here in the chambers. Please refrain from personal attacks, speaking out of turn, shouting, clapping, and pacing. If you have signs, please keep them to 8.5 by 11 inches in size. Please also stop speaking if a point of order is called so I may rule on the point of order and the record is clear. If rules are not followed, I may interrupt speakers to call for compliance. If compliance with the rules doesn't occur, then I may pause the meeting. If there's an actual disruption, I will give a warning. If the disruption persists or happens again, the person will be asked to leave. And if you are here to testify in a public hearing item, when you come forward, please state your name, the community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live. Please stay on topic and direct comments to me or other people on the dais. Please note that for initial and final audience participation, the subjects are open. It's helpful if testifiers provide comments on any proposed amendments and make specific suggestions. And when you testify, you'll have 3 minutes, and community council representatives will have 5. Assembly members don't typically answer questions during periods of audience participation or public testimony. For public testimony, that comes later during the debate portion as it's public testimony and the time is for the public to speak. Again, thank you all for being here tonight, and we will now go to committee reports, and we will start with Mr. Weddleton.
Thank you. Committee reports. Community Economic Development Committee did not meet last week, and we haven't put the agenda together for next week quite yet. I would like to congratulate Alexis Johnson, new Chief of Staff. Hello over there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. And Ms. Johnson, I had a note to myself to congratulate you in your new position. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Allard?
Thank you. I don't have anything to report, and congratulations to Alexis as well.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Ethics and Election Committee met on January 27th, and we received an municipal election update. And we also discussed election best practices, and included in that was the ballot tracking software that we're going to be using for the upcoming municipal election. So anyone who's interested in tracking their ballot, be sure to go sign up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder reminder that the Public Safety Committee is meeting tomorrow at 11:10, and we had discussed the agenda before, but just another reminder that there will be a presentation on the update for the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, and then we have our regular update, and it'll be our first opportunity to hear directly from our new Chief Curl. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I just want to note for the record that the Reapportionment Committee will be meeting on February the 9th from 11 to 2 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Zalatel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No report. May I have a moment of personal privilege?
Go ahead, Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note for the record and for those watching or listening, I apologize for not being there in person. I continue to be ill, frankly, as complications to having gotten COVID, and really just want to acknowledge for everyone who's had to go through this personally or known someone that COVID is still here. It's still very disruptive, and that while we continue to kind of move through this period of high transmission, that hopefully we'll be able to keep you up to date on the municipal response, and that it's still top of mind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My co-chair of the Public Safety Committee already gave an update on that, and so I'll just focus on the Health Policy Committee, which is going to be tomorrow following the, actually, no, it's prior, isn't it? Let me make sure I'm doing the right. So the Health Policy Committee is going to be at 10 a.m. tomorrow prior to the Public Safety Committee, so I encourage everyone to attend. And I wanted to just give an update that we are going to have a presentation from the Mental Health Trust Authority, as well as representatives of Providence Health Services and South Central Foundation on the crisis now, specifically talking about the stabilization centers. So it should be really informative. I encourage people to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Verdia. Next, we have addendum to the agenda. And before we get to the addendum, we are going to address our laid on the table items. There are 4 laid on the table items. 1 is supplemental, and 3 require 8 votes from the body in order to lay those items on the table. So I will start with the supplemental item 15A2, resolution number AR 2022-29S, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcohol special land use permit for beverage dispensary tourism use and license number 6015 for AK Cosby LLC DBA Aloft Anchorage Midtown in the B3 General Business District located at 310 West 36th Avenue within Moderna Age Estates Subdivision, Lot 1C, generally located of West 40th Ave, east of Centerpoint Drive. Thank you. Again, this is supplemental, and it'll be item 15A2, and a vote is not required. The next 3 items do require a vote. The first is unnumbered AM XXX-2022, sole source purchase from Blank Rome Government Relations, LLC, BRGR, for lobbying services for the municipality of Anchorage, $100,000. This, if approved, this will be item 10D14. Is there a motion to lay this item on the table, and a second?
Move to lay on the table.
Second.
Second.
Moved to lay on the table by Mr. Rivera and seconded by Mr. Constant. As this is an item from the administration, Ms. Domboski, would you speak to why this item needs to be laid on the table for action tonight?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the happenings in Washington, D.C. are fast and furious. We're expecting movement in some of the transportation items relating to potential funding of the port in February. So this has become a time-sensitive item.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Seeing no members in the queue, and I will go ahead and ask for unanimous consent to lay this item on the table if there's no objection. Seeing and hearing no objection, this item is laid on the table. It will be item 10D14. Next is unnumbered AR number 2022-X, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $473,216.89 from the Area-Wide General Fund 2021 operating budget as a transfer to the Girdwood Valley Service Area Capital Improvement Projects Fund, all within the Parks and Rec Department, to be utilized for future design, engineering, construction of a suspension bridge over Glacier Creek to reconnect Winter Creek Trail. Is there a motion to lay this item on the table?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Domboski, as this is an item from the administration, would you also speak to why this item should be laid on the table tonight?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Durand has indicated that this has become a time-sensitive issue if we want to get the construction underway for this season. Therefore, we're asking the Assembly to consider the appropriation of these funds so the Winter Creek Bridge can reconnect that trail, or it's actually the Glacier Creek Bridge, I believe, to connect the Winter Creek Trail.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Seeing no members in the queue, I'm seeking unanimous consent for the motion to lay this item on the table. Seeing and hearing no objection, this item has been laid on the table. It will be item 10E4. The final item to be laid on the table that requires a vote is unnumbered AIM XXX-2022, conforming changes to the 2022 Municipality of Anchorage legislative program. Is there a motion to lay this item on the table?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Rivera. And I will go to Ms. Domboski, though I understand that this item was worked in conjunction with the administration and Assembly members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, a couple of the amendments that passed at the last Assembly meeting were conflicting in the title of a section. So the AIM explains what those, the solution was to kind of incorporate both of those together. It's relating to the Navigation Center or homelessness. Bryce Wilbanks did work with Assembly members Dunbar as well as Assembly member Zalatel, and those were both the movers of the amendments to make sure that they're conforming. The reason it's time sensitive is because we did make a change to the document, so we want to make sure that the Assembly is aware of it and concurs with that prior to going to Juneau next week and handing out these documents to the entire legislature.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Seeing no members in the queue, I will ask for unanimous consent from the body to lay this item on the table. Seeing and hearing no objection, this will be item 10F2. Mr. Vice Chair, could I get a motion to incorporate the addendum as printed and distributed and the laid on the table items?
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to incorporate the addendum as printed and distributed and the laid on the table items, and has been seconded by Mr. Rivera. Asking for unanimous consent. Seeing and hearing no opposition, the addendum as printed and distributed and the laid on the table items have been incorporated into the agenda. I want to go ahead and go through the consent agenda for items to be pulled before we move. If we can do that quickly. Consent agenda items numbered 10A through 10F are typically routine or non-controversial items such as bid awards, new business information and reports, and ordinances and resolutions for introduction. The items on the consent agenda may be approved by the Assembly by a single vote on a motion to approve the consent agenda. Prior to approval, items may be pulled by an Assembly member for discussion and separate vote on each of those items. Under the Assembly Rules of Procedure, all ordinances and some resolutions will have an opportunity for public hearing on a future date. So I will now go down the dais and ask each member if they would like to pull any items, and I will start with Mr. Perez-Verdilla.
No items. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No items this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Ms. Zalatel, any items to pull?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No items.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Constant?
Yes, I would pull 10A1, 10A2, 10A3, and 10G5.
And that is 10 Alpha 1, 2, and 3, and 10 G Golf 5.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No additional items.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No items.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Peterson, any items to pull from the consent agenda?
No items this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Ms. Allard?
No items. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, I don't think I have any items, but I missed something on the changes to the legislative program. Does this take action from us to approve the corrections?
It is item 10F2. So it's part of the consent agenda unless, of course, it's pulled off.
I'd like to pull it because I haven't been able to go through it carefully enough.
So that's
And
item...
not that I oppose anything, just thank you.
Understood. So 10F2. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. So we have 5 items that have been pulled from the consent agenda. Under 10A Alpha, 1, 2, and 3 by Mr. Constant. 10F Foxtrot 2 by Mr. Weddleton. And 10G Golf 5 by Mr. Constant. Do members have any other items they wish to pull? Mr. Vice Chair, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the pulled items?
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made to approve the consent agenda minus the pulled items. It's been made by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Rivera. Seeking unanimous consent. Seeing and hearing no opposition, the consent agenda minus the pulled items have been passed. So now we will go to audience participation, and then after audience participation, we will take up those 5 items that were pulled off the consent agenda.
Madam, I apologize. Yeah, if it's possible, I'd like to pull item number 10E1. I apologize.
Ms. Allard, you will need to make a motion to reconsider the vote on the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to do a reconsideration, please, in regards to the consent agenda.
So the motion by Ms. Allard is a vote to reconsider the vote on the consent agenda, and it has been seconded by Mr. Weddleton. A yes vote would bring the consent agenda back before us. Seeing no other members.
Madam Clerk.
I don't
Chair.
see you in the queue.
Yeah. Sorry, I just have a question.
Mr. Constant?
Thank you. To the mover, is this something that could be a statement, or do you have a question about it? Because if it's just...
Actually, thank you, Mr. Constant. It would just be a quick statement. I don't necessarily have to go through.
So I would prefer that as a method instead of undoing and then redoing the consent agenda and pulling an item. That would be way better.
If Chair would allow me to do that, that would be great.
If you would withdraw your motion and your second, then I would be happy to grant you a brief moment of personal privilege.
I withdraw it, my motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Allard.
Thank you. So in regards to, we spent almost we approved $139,000 in regards to the offices in Chugach Eagle River. I was made aware of the renovations that they were looking at, myself and Ms. Kennedy, and the renovations they were looking at would almost be in excess of $250,000. And that was literally to just have us have office spaces at the town center. After speaking with Ms. Kennedy in regards to this, I felt that this was not a good use of taxpayer funds. So what I did was contact the real estate office that we have here at our municipality and requested that they could find us a space, because even if they renovated it, we would still have to rent that space back from the MOA. So in doing our research, we found an office space that would be $850 a month with limited renovations, which would not exceed more than $10,000. There was already furniture in there, so the $10,000 would be more to set up lines, phone lines, electronics, and other ways that Ms. Kennedy and I can do our job. But I just wanted to clarify that with our community, that we were all about saving money, and I would say we did a pretty darn good job at it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. So we will now go to initial audience participation, as we do not have any appearance requests. For this initial audience participation, I'd like to prioritize time for members of the public who would like to speak on a consent agenda item, those who cannot stay until the second audience participation at the end of the meeting, and those who would have difficulty staying for a public hearing item already on the agenda due to childcare or travel issues before we open it up to the broader public. As a reminder, if you choose to speak now on a public hearing item already on the agenda, you may not speak again when we open the public hearing on the item. Also, if you choose to speak now, you cannot speak again during the final audience participation. For audience participation, please direct your comments to the assembly or the chair. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and personal attacks are not appropriate. In addition, audience members are asked to avoid clapping or other disruptions during audience participation. Last, during audience participation, assembly members generally do not answer questions or respond to comments. We may talk to you offline during a break or after the meeting to address any questions you have. I will, as chair, work to maintain decorum at this meeting and ask for your assistance. With that, welcome. Please come forward, state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I live in District 6, represented by Mr. Weddleton and Ms. LaFrance. My name is Dustin Sherman. I come in tonight to talk to you about something I've never talked to anybody about before, but it's something I see that's a problem here. Many of us notice that we've had a problem getting our grocery stores stocked, and our supply chain is extremely limited right now because the trucker stuff that's going on in Canada coming through. So one of the things that a lot of you don't know about me is I grew up in eastern Colorado. It was farm country. And I know a lot of farmers out there, and I've talked to a lot of farmers here in the last 2 months. And one of the things that we don't really have here is a really good infrastructure for agriculture. You can Google it all you want. Everybody, all they talk about is the climate, how bad our soil is, and our short summers. Well, they grow stuff out in Palmer, and we have our farmers markets, things like that here in town. What I'm doing a little bit of research and stuff, there is a place that's 3 miles from Anchorage that we could actually put domes like we have here in Anchorage that wouldn't affect the city, and you already have windmills out there, and that's Fire Island. You guys could, and I don't know the people who manage that. I know it's Siri, but what I'm asking for you to do is maybe contact them and see if there's a way that we could put some domes up there. If you were to do it, you could literally have a harvest every 3 to 4 months. I'm not joking. This is from the farmers that I've talked to in Colorado. That's their, you know, the seasons of stuff that's out there. I've driven tractor. I've planted corn. I've planted wheat. I've planted all kinds of stuff out there, and I understand how it all works. We can grow wheat in Anchorage, but we can't seem to grow actual farm products for the city. Now, you might not be able to feed the entire city, but you could fill the gaps in on when we run low. If you think that this supply chain problem is going to be a one-off, you guys are sadly mistaken, because it's not going to be. It's going to continue to keep happening. What happens the next time we have a pandemic and we can't get stuff up here? It's going to happen. There's no way to stop it. The only thing that we can do is be self-sufficient. That's what I'm promoting right now, is trying to be self-sufficient here in the state. And I know that some of these talks are already starting to happen in Juneau. That's not out publicly yet, but I know that they're talking about it. And I think that the citizens here in Anchorage need to jump on that and do the best that they can to try and start supporting their people. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Welcome. Please come forward and state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
My name is Hans Schweiger, spelled Schwaiger. And I am here to express some of the issues what I experienced lately, and it is concerning suffocation of Inga Street between 54th and 56th Avenue. SWS applied for vacating the street, and as it appears with the planning board, they assigned all of the easement to SWS. I am not opposed to the vacating of the easement because I was applying for that twice before, except it was heavy. On the first time, there were some heavy conditions placed on it. In any case, I am referring mostly on the issue of common law, and which, if this is used, then it should be applied to both sides of the street owners. I own the west side of that property. Clippership Motorhome also owns a portion of it, and I am requesting that the board would look into it to have that done the proper way. That's it, I think.
Thank you. And a member has a question for you. Mr. Constant?
Thank you, sir. It's helpful to understand what you meant when you submitted to us your concerns.
Yes, that's correct.
And were you not consulted in this process? Have you not heard from them? Did they make an offer of any kind?
It is a very...
Speak at the mic.
It is a complicated process. It seems like we had one time a meeting planned with Dowell Engineer, SWS, and Dave
Whitfield
from Subcity. And I had to cancel it because I was exposed to COVID. And then after that, it was not I tried to get a meeting going again, and it didn't take place till last Friday. We met at the SWS office with Dowell and Craig
Thank you.
Bennett.
I think someone else has another question. This is a very interesting topic.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, thank you. And I had spoke on the phone at length with Mr. Schweiger, so I have a little bit of the background here that at least, Mr. Schweiger's side of it. But so my understanding, so you had a meeting more recently.
What's that?
But that was the time to appeal the decision. That was quite a while ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a very unfortunate. The meeting of the plotting board was on December 1st on a Wednesday, and I immediately told the lady who was speaking that I'm gonna appeal that. I went to Dowell and told her that I'm gonna appeal it. She looked like she was not committing to anything, so I told her I'm gonna get a lawyer. Unfortunately, the lawyer, I called the same day. There was no answer. Then I called the next day on Friday, and he was in Seattle, and he said he's coming back on tomorrow. That would be on Saturday. And then he said, let's get together on Monday. On Monday, I was again waiting a half day, and then I called because he was calling me supposedly. And then I called in the afternoon and inquired about, and then he said, yeah, let's meet on Thursday. And so I did not know about the 7-day limit, but I was happy to meet him on Thursday, but the window was, so to speak, closed because 7 days. So I was up in the air.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Weddleton. There's one more member in the queue, and I think we may need to take the discussion offline to follow up. Ms. Zelatel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we make sure clerk staff gets this gentleman my card? We've connected once before on the issue, and I'm happy to follow back up with him about where it is now and see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zelatel. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the community in which you live.
Hello, Assembly. I'm from the District of Spenard. My name is Jason, and I'm in the District of Perez Verdilla, and Quinn Davidson, who's absent right now. And I'm going to start my presentation here. Hello, Assembly. In 110 days from today, we will mark the 30th anniversary of the worst fluoride poisoning tragedy in the United States. A week ago, you were told that on May 22nd, in 1992, a mysterious illness hit the village of Hooper Bay, killing one and sickening 260 others who were airlifted to Anchorage. 2 weeks later, it was confirmed that Hooper Bay was the site of the United States' worst known fluoride accident, poisoning the entire community. Acid of sodium hexafluoride corroded the fluoride pumping equipment, and it malfunctioned. As a result, Hooper Bay residents fell victim to a mysterious poisoning. Because fluoride is odorless, tasteless, and colorless at deadly doses. One of the symptoms of chronic acute fluoride poisoning is unquenchable thirst, which makes the victims drink even more water. Dizziness, blurred vision, and body tingling, and possible resulting death. Shortly after this tragedy, 135 native villages stopped putting fluoride in their water supplies. In 2007, the city of Juneau conducted an executive investigation of fluoride and concluded to stop adding this to their water supply. In 2010, the city of Fairbanks put together a blue ribbon task force and conducted what is considered the most comprehensive executive investigation of fluoridation by any city in the United States. Fairbanks concluded to completely stop fluoridation. Anchorage, to this date, in spite of many repeated calls from the community, never conducted a review or proper investigation into fluoridation. Even after a fluoride pump malfunction on Fort Elmond or Fort Rich in April of 2010, calls to investigate and review these fluoride studies continued to fall on deaf ears. Zero investigative action from the Assembly of Anchorage has occurred. In 2011, our neighbor city of Palmer conducted an administrative review of the Fairbanks and Juneau studies and came to their conclusion to cease fluoridation. I ask in the name of the anniversary of the upcoming Hooper Bay tragedy for the Assembly here to please motion the administration to conduct a proper review of the Fairbanks and Juneau studies and investigate this. This is a serious issue, and in light of the upcoming 30-year anniversary of the worst poisoning tragedy in the United States, I ask the Assembly here again to motion for an overdue administrative review of the Fairbanks and Juneau studies. I ask from you, as our representatives, your diligence, and please motion for an administrative review.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Moira Pahala. I am the advocacy manager for the ACLU of Alaska, and I live in Assembly District 5. Tonight, I want to take this moment to not only shine a light on the lack of accountability, community connection, and trust that is between the community of Anchorage and its police department, but to call for action to be taken towards stronger intervention from the Assembly in establishing a system of accountability for APD. The need for accountability and transparency over APD is long overdue. I assume you all remember last year, Anchorage voters approved Proposition 4, which provides tax funding for body-worn cameras for APD. This was proposed as a solution for the lack of accountability that the community has over its local law enforcement. For the past 9 months, the ACLU, including me, our coalition members, and volunteers have been advocating for APD to create a policy for body-worn cameras that delivers accountability and transparency. The ACLU has even tried working with APD on its draft policy by releasing recommendations for what a good policy entails, showing up to each and every community or policy-based meeting and meeting them at the table when they ask for a meeting. Regardless of my and our efforts, APD has continued to fail our community by releasing 2 draft policies that do not reflect true community accountability. APD's current draft policy would fail to ensure that police must release footage to the public in the event of a shooting, killing, or other demonstration of excessive force, which, as I recall, these were the exact kinds of footage that spurred the push for body cameras in the first place. APD's policy also fails to ban the use of facial recognition technology, flagging alarming privacy concerns, and does not outline how the video footage will be stored, shared, and kept in its original unedited form. It should not take the murder of innocent people by police to justify the push for accountability and its most basic tools to do so. Between the years of 2013 and 2019, Alaska had the highest rate of police murders in America. Dalen Paulu was only 16 when he was murdered by APD in this exact month of 2020. He and many other families who have been harmed by police deserve justice that will never come until we implement the tools that are needed to ensure that there is accountability in our community. The Anchorage community should not have to demand that we have the most basic form of holding our police accountable. APD's refusal to release an equitable policy relays one clear message. APD does not want the Anchorage community to have access to body-worn camera footage and other modes of oversight on the Anchorage Police Department. Last week, Michael Curl, who is about to become the chief of the Anchorage Police Department, spoke to the Assembly during a work session on his nomination, commenting that the few very vocal minority people that badmouth the police will be trusted fairly and without bias. That statement is bias. This statement shows that Officer Curl does not understand the volume of the need for police accountability.
Thank you for your participation.
As I stand here representing an organization that works to defend our civil liberties, I cannot stay silent.
Thank you for your participation. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
Irene Queetnow, District 3, represented by Eagle River. I have 2 comments tonight. During our community council meeting in November, Mr. Perez-Redia said that the notion by the public that the Assembly is fighting the mayor and his administration is just not true. Here are just a few facts. When the budget was supposed to be approved, you went against the mayor's recommendation, added your pet projects, and then overrode the mayor's vetoes. You did not confirm an unprecedented number of the mayor's appointments, voting against them. Recently, when the mayor presented the legislative program, again you added your pet projects and then overrode his vetoes. The same with the bonds and the Ordinance 2021-117, just to give some examples. To quote Mr. Constant, action speaks loudly and voting is an action. My second comment is for the media. For several members of this Assembly, for the Blue Alaskan, the ADN, and all the other news sources that so heavily support the extreme left narrative. Here is how you report. You pick one thing that fits your narrative of division and fear, you blow it out of proportion, and you ignore everything else. If you guys would report facts, the extreme left narrative would have crumbled a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer.
Niall Sherwood Williams. I'm a candidate for District 3 for Assembly for Seat D. I look forward to the debate and to allowing the Anchorage voters to decide which candidate will best suit the needs of District 3 and Anchorage at large. Some concerns that I have today are regarding item 10D2 that's before this assembly body today. I listened to the 24-minute and 3-second confirmation hearing of potential Chief Michael Curl. I took extensive notes, 2 sides of 1 sheet of paper. The first thing that brought attention to me was when Chief Curl said, and I quote, "He does not need to show you how he does things, and that you should just trust him." I would like to ask the recent person who was posted in Alaska News Source. His name is Kawika. Kawika suffered a death up in Bear Valley. I am not sure, nor is any member of the community, exactly what happened that day. But the family is calling for accountability and transparency in the Anchorage Police Department. The voters of this municipality entrust you with the fiduciary responsibility to our funds. You passed a $1.8 million bond last April. Body-worn cameras. April 21st, when the election was certified, through the chair, former chair, Felix Rivera, went before Daniela Rivera of Alaska News Source and said, now we can start working on the policy and procedure for the cameras. Well, let me tell you, through the chair, to the mayor, what needs to be the policy and procedure. It needs to be 100% open and transparent to the public. When you're using information against someone in a criminal complaint, you need to release that body camera footage to the criminal defendant and to the families of deceased people and uses of excessive force. Another example was out front the Gaslight Lounge. The man's name was Carl McGeary, 44 years old, father. He was hit in the head by someone from J-Bear, punched in the head. He fell to the ground and later died at a local Alaska hospital. It took 30 minutes for Anchorage Safety Patrol to get there, right across the street from APD.
Sir, your time is up. Your time is up, sir. Thank you for your participation. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live. And if you could turn on the microphone. There you go.
Hi, my name is Emily Klock. The last name is spelled K-L-O-C, and I live in Anchorage in District 3. And I'm here to testify about the lack of transparency about what's going on at the Anchorage Police Department. As a few have mentioned, in April of 2021, 54% of voters supported body-worn cameras, and the public continues to be kept in the dark on what is happening with this policy. When will the body-worn camera policy be finalized? How can the community continue to give input on this? What's the process, and who should we be communicating with? It's now been almost a year since voters spoke clearly on this issue. Last summer, there was an in-person listening session that I attended, and many of our questions continue to remain unanswered. Chief McCoy promised a Zoom session for community members to be heard on this issue, but he didn't have time in his short tenure as chief to complete that process. So I request that Chief Curl hold to this promise. I have the ability to be here today, even with last-minute notice of Chief Curl's confirmation. I live alone and I don't have to worry about putting others at risk by attending this meeting. But there are many people who are looking for transparency on this and wondering what is going on. I felt that it was worth the risk to be here today at the height of the pandemic because we continue to be left with little to no opportunities to comment on this issue. We will continue to ask for questions of the Assembly and APD until body-worn camera policy is implemented. And we'll continue to push for opportunities to comment and be heard on this issue. In order for the public to have trust in the Anchorage Police Department, we need transparency on what is going on with this policy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your participation. Ma'am, there's a member with a question for you, Ms. Allard.
Thank you. I think you clarified it a little bit, but was there only one time that you had addressed this with our previous chief?
There was only one in-person listening session opportunity that I was aware of that happened, I believe, last June.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, Chief Curl hasn't had the opportunity yet, and we need to be able to make sure that we support him in this endeavor to make sure the body cams come on board properly.
And that's exactly why I'm here today, to say that we need to ensure that they occur, because it's been since last year, April of 2021, that voters want this. So we need to ensure that it happens as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Thank you for your participation. Oh, Ms. Kennedy actually has a question for you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. I absolutely appreciate the concerns about not having enough public participation opportunities, but I think there have been several, and if we've not done a good job of getting that out there, then that is on us, because the Anchorage Police Department has had multiple opportunities. We've talked about this several times at the Assembly's Public Safety Committee meeting, and we have the police department has also posted online the opportunity to comment online once they put the draft of the policy on the Anchorage Police Department website. But we also have another meeting coming up tomorrow at 11:10, and there will be, some more update opportunity there. And then I don't know if my co-chair, Mr. Perez-Verdia, can talk a little bit about a date, but we do have another date where we're meeting with the Public Safety Advisory Committee, which is a public member committee, to kind of talk about exactly where the policy is at. We'll talk about the legal implications and what the legal department has recommended at this point. Mr. Perez-Verdia, excuse me, Madam Chair, if I might, Mr. Perez-Verdia, do we have a date for that particular meeting?
We do. We have a joint meeting of the Anchorage Assembly Public Safety Committee meeting and the Public Safety Commission, which is going to be on February 18th, and I believe, let me just double check the time of that. Let me make sure I got that right before I tell you. It's going to be hold on a second. Maybe someone can help me. Here we go.
Mr. Perez-Verdia,
Yeah.
through the chair, it's scheduled for 1 p.m. on
1 p.m.
Friday, February 18.
Yeah. And so the intention of that meeting is to do just what you said, is to update on the development of the policy, to talk about sort of the legal justification for why the policy that has been presented is what it is, and to discuss the public input to date. There was a survey that was done. There was a portal where lots of people submitted, and so we'll share that as well in terms of what we heard from the public, and then we'll talk about next steps in terms of what we need to do to move forward. The other thing that I would say is that it's been made very clear to us on the Assembly that the approval and the development of this policy is not the responsibility or the role of the Assembly. It is the administration, but we have continued to advocate that this is an important issue. There's a lot of public interest and concern around this, and so we want to make sure that all of the voice of the public and the Assembly and others are heard before it's finalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Verdia. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy, and thank you for your participation.
Thanks for that information. If I may just ask briefly, the February 18th meeting, can people call in to that meeting? Can the public call in?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now go back to the items that we pulled off of the consent agenda before we move to initial public or audience participation. We had voted on the consent agenda, and by doing so, confirmed Chief Curl as the APD chief. So congratulations, Chief. And we also confirmed Ms. Cheryl Frasca as the Director of OMB, Office of Management and Budget. So congratulations as well to Ms. Frasca. I also want to note for the public's information that when we passed or accepted the consent agenda that included items in 10A through 10F, other than the 5 items that were pulled, which we're going to take up now, or items that were introduced for a future public hearing, which are all the items in 10G. So if you were here to see action on an item listed on the consent agenda that was not pulled, those items have been passed or accepted. And so we will go ahead and move on to the first item that was pulled, which is item 10A1 on the addendum. Resolution number AR 2022-35, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Sharon A. Walsh for her 16 years of service with the municipality of Anchorage and Port of Alaska. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Rivera, seeking unanimous consent. Seeing and hearing no opposition, this resolution is approved. Who is reading and who is presenting?
I'm reading.
And I am presenting.
It's a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Sharon A. Walsh for her 16 years of service with the municipality of Anchorage and Port of Alaska. Whereas Sharon A. Walsh accepted her mortal coil in 1957 as who would eventually be child number 4 of 8, born to Leo and Beverly Walsh. And whereas in 1963 she began a stellar academic career with the Anchorage school system, culminating in 1978 with her graduation from the University of Notre Dame with a bachelor's degree in engineering, during a time when she walked those hallowed grounds with the likes of the great Joe Montana. And whereas, upon graduation, she returned to Alaska and began a long and distinguished engineering career in both the public and private sector that spanned 43 years and 9 mayors. And whereas that career began in the U.S. Public Health Service's Environmental Health Branch, which took her all over Alaska, visiting and helping countless Alaska Native communities. And whereas her service to the municipality of Anchorage began in 1979 with a short stint as a plan review engineer under then Mayor George Sullivan. And whereas the call of the private sector was too great to ignore, so in 1981 she began a 29-year run making her bones with the prestigious engineering and construction firms such as Trick Nyman Hayes, Montgomery Watson, Morrison Knutson, Osborne Construction, and yes, Walsh and Company, her father's firm. And whereas the drawback to public service in 2007 saw her back to the municipality as a plan review engineer, again in what is now PM&E. And whereas in 2010 she was appointed as both the municipality's Director of Development Services and as municipal building official. And after 4 years of ensuring the local construction codes were followed, Sharon's years of expertise and experience moved to the Port of Alaska as Deputy Port Director. And whereas since 2014, the port has benefited immensely from her knowledge, experience, and consummate writing skills, not only in the upkeep of the existing port infrastructure, but to also successfully acquire over $60 million in federal grant monies through the BUILD, PIDP, and FEMA earthquake recovery and port security grant programs, as well as from the state's harbor maintenance grant program. And whereas, as if that weren't enough, Sharon has also been the municipality's shepherd and sage guide through the start of the Port of Alaska Modernization Program, which under her watchful eye has resulted in the successful construction of its first branch, the soon-to-be-in-service petroleum and cement terminal. And whereas, throughout all this, she has also found the time to be a wife, a mother to Ben, Brenna, and Rebecca, a grandmother of 7, an avid skier, a cancer survivor, and a tireless volunteer in service to the American Society of Civil Engineers, the Alaska Society of Professional Engineers, and the Association of General Contractors, and the Bishop's Attic. And whereas, as a member of the port staff, Sharon is also a member of a very tight family who will sorely miss her friendship and conversation. And whereas on January 31st, 2022, after almost 43 years of unselfish public service and to finally let her husband Doug win an argument, it is rightfully time to retire and to be a little selfish and make time to focus on matters closer to home, to volunteer more with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and to do more skiing. Now therefore be it resolved that the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes and honors Sharon A. Walsh for her 16 years of selfless service with the municipality of Anchorage and Port of Alaska, and wishes her and her family continued good health. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this first day of February 2022.
Congratulations. Thank you. Oh, I have a microphone. Everybody get comfortable, sit back. No. I do have a few words that I wanted to say. Members of the Assembly, Mr. Mayor, members of the administration, my colleagues from the Port of Alaska, and all who are here or listening online tonight. Hi, Mom. Thank you for the honor of this recognition. I realize the resolution took time to compose, a lot of time, took time to deliver, a lot of time, and it's taking everyone's time to hear tonight. So thank you for spending some of your time tonight. The currency of our lives is time. Thank you for spending it on me and my family. I'm truly grateful. This is a big milestone for me and for Doug Webster, my husband, my kids, Ben, Brenna, raise your hand so I don't have to keep turning around, and Rebecca, son-in-law Aaron, and grandchildren Keller, Landon, and Josie, who couldn't be here tonight, and Ari, Tegan, Olivia, and Isabel, who are here. For the last 40-something years, Doug and I have spent much of our time on the things we were supposed to, making a living and supporting our families. Now, we will spend the time remaining to us appreciating each other, our aging parents, our siblings, these kids and grandkids, and our beautiful world. We're so blessed to have been born and raised and to be living our lives here in Anchorage, Alaska. The resolution described the highlights of my career. There have been ups and downs through all of it, and I could never have survived them without the support of this family. They have all been understanding, supportive, and sometimes tough-loving through the years. I owe them my gratitude and in many ways my sanity, so thank you. Now I enter into the third of my life, the after-working life. That's before the afterlife. Doug and I have many plans to make the most of it, but before we do, I feel compelled to share some words that have guided me through the ups and downs of this work, both in the private and public sectors. For those of you who are continuing in municipal service, either as elected officials, appointed executives, supervisory staff, rank and file, or consultants, and thank you everyone from Jacobs for being here tonight, and the team. For you, I offer these words. They're the words of Dr. Kent M. Keith, and were adopted and adapted also by a remarkable woman named Mother Teresa of Calcutta. You may have heard these words before, but they bear repeating tonight. So please consider how these words may apply to your unique duties and responsibilities as you continue to serve. The title is Anyway. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Engineers love this one. Build anyway. People really need help, but may attack you if you do help them. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have, and you'll still get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway. Thank you.
Before you go, Mr. Constant?
Sharon Walsh. So the port is going to miss you dearly. My experience with you spans the port, it spans the building official, it spans the South Addition Community Council and the Government Hill Community Council. And the highlights that I can remember right now are, of course, and now it's a highlight in retrospect, that I made 2 calls the day the earthquake happened when I was on vacation. First was, is my dog okay? And second, is the port still standing? And thank goodness it was and is, because of your efforts as we continue to move towards its renewal. I also remember the boat ride in which I have a eponymously named pile that I discovered, the Constant Pile, that was one of the piles that has died, or is dying, and is in need of repair. But I think that my fondest memory is actually when I was knocking doors and talking with you about what I dreamed to do before I was here, but after we met out there. And I want to say that I look forward to more steps in this progression, and it'll be more than skiing, but I do hope to see you there too. Thank you for your service to this municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. And thank you, Ms. Walsh. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you for your service, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Next, we have before us item 10A2, resolution number AR 2022-38, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing Finus Sheldon for his service and dedication to the Chugiak Eagle River community. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve by Mr. Constant, seconded by Ms. Allard. Seeking unanimous consent. Seeing no opposition, this resolution is approved. Who is reading and who is presenting, and is there someone here to receive?
Madam Chair, I am reading and Ms. Allard is presenting, and we want to just invite the Finus Sheldon family to come forward. There are some others, I think, that are joining us from the Chugiak Eagle River community. They're welcome to come forward as well, or stand in their seat, whatever you prefer. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing Finus Sheldon for his service and dedication to the Chugiak Eagle River community. Whereas Finus Sheldon was born on November 14, 1947 in Hooker, Missouri, he was known in his family as Junior and was the oldest of 12 children. And whereas after graduating from high school and while attending college in Rolla, Missouri, Finus met Sharon Batley and they married on February 11, 1967. He enlisted in the United States Air Force and soon found himself and his young bride stationed in Anchorage, Alaska later that same year. After 4 years of military service, Finus was honorably discharged and enrolled at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. He graduated with a business degree, becoming the first in his family to graduate from college. With the arrival of son Tracy and daughter Lillian, Phyllis and Sharon were quickly making Chugiak, Alaska their family's home. And whereas Finus first worked in the banking industry and went on to start his own real estate and construction business, Finus Realty and Services Company, which built and sold single and multifamily houses in the Anchorage, Chugiak, and Eagle River areas. And whereas having started at a young age learning to give back to his community, Finus found multiple opportunities to engage with various professional, fraternal, and service organizations. Finus was a member and a leader in Lions Club, JC's, Pioneers of Alaska, the 40 and 8, American Legion, Chugiak Senior Center Foundation, and the Chugiak Area Business Association. And whereas Finus's constant fundraising and coordination efforts resulted in several successful projects, including acquiring the thermal imaging fire helmets for the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department, the Blood Bank of Alaska facility, the Welcome to Chugiak sign on the Glen Highway, and most recently, the new sound system at the McDonald Recreation Center in Eagle River. Every year at Thanksgiving and Christmas, Finus helped coordinate community dinners and family food baskets for those who needed some extra help for the holidays. And whereas Finus is probably most known and most recognized as the community's own Uncle Sam. As a proud American and a veteran, Finus's favorite holiday was the 4th of July. Every year he helped raise money and coordinate one of the best celebrations in the municipality that started on the evening of the 3rd of July and culminated in an impressive fireworks display at midnight, making Chugiak Eagle River the first in the nation to celebrate Independence Day. Finus, dressed in his patriotic Uncle Sam costume, was the master of ceremonies for each annual event, which occasionally included a military flyby or several paratroopers jumping in. Finus, as Uncle Sam, also drove many of the grand marshals in the annual Chugiak 4th of July parade in his beautiful red Corvette. And whereas Finus's fingerprints have been left on many facets of life in Chugiak Eagle River, Finus loved Chugiak Eagle River, and the community has many memorable ways in which to continue to love and appreciate him and his legacy of community service for years to come. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly honors Finus Sheldon for his service and dedication to the Chugiak Eagle River community, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this first day of February 2022.
Thank you, Crystal. Finus's footprints touched many people's lives with kindness and caring and love. And his passing has left a big hole in our hearts and in our community. We are honored to accept this award, and we are honored, we are thankful that you're honoring him tonight as one of Alaska's finest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Finus's daughter, and if you knew him, he wouldn't miss a chance to make the most of this microphone, but in his spirit, we're just going to say thank you so much. We really do appreciate this recognition. It truly is an honor in his memory. And as was noted in the resolution, we do have a lot of wonderful visible reminders throughout the Chugiak Eagle River community to remember him by. So when you're driving down the Glen Highway and you see the Welcome to Chugiak sign, or if you see the flags up throughout Eagle River on a holiday, or you make it out to those 4th of July events, just remember him, and we'll keep him in his heart, in our hearts. So thank you very much. Thank you. Before you go, I have a member in the queue for you, Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, you know, I don't believe I've ever met him, but this is really amazing, the stuff he's done, and it's certainly a tribute to him and family that let him do it, and it speaks to Anchorage too, where so many people, you know, there are people who can do things like this and make such a big impact on our city. So, thank you all. It's amazing. I'm so glad we did this just to know about him.
Thank you. Yeah, he was very passionate about the Chugiak Eagle River area and made it their home for about 50 years, specifically in there. I was fortunate to be born and raised here, and it's, you know, was never something that wasn't relayed to us, you know, that this is a wonderful place to call home, and there's a lot of opportunity here, and we're excited to continue with our family here today. So thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Madam Chair, I don't know if I'm popping up in queue. I apologize.
No, you're not, actually. Go ahead, Ms. Allard.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you. I know that this past 4th of July, me and Ms. Kennedy, we had the privilege of riding in the little red Corvette, and we absolutely had a ball, and he had so much energy, and so thank you for lending him to us.
That was certainly a 4th of July to remember, especially the parade, so that's one we'll remember. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Allard. Thank you. We now have before us item 10A3, resolution number AR 2022-39, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating February 2022 as Black History Month. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Dunbar, seeking unanimous consent. Seeing no opposition, this resolution is approved. Who is reading?
I'll be reading.
And who is presenting? Mr. Rivera.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating February 2022 as Black History Month. Whereas Black History Month was established in 1926 by Carter G. Woodson to draw attention to the experiences and successes of Black people in the United States. And whereas Dr. Woodson originally chose the second week of February for Negro History Week because it marks the birthday of three great Americans, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Abraham Lincoln, and the founding of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People on February 12, 1909. And whereas, since 1976, every American president has designated February as Black History Month and endorsed a specific theme. The Black History Month 2022 theme, Black Health and Wellness, explores the legacy of not only Black scholars and medical practitioners in Western medicine, but also other ways of knowing. For example, birth workers, doulas, midwives, naturopaths, herbalists, etc. throughout the African diaspora. The 2022 theme considers activities, rituals, and initiatives that Black communities have utilized to be well. And whereas it is essential that we acknowledge and are aware of the wide diversity of Black organizations that provide an array of perspectives and contributions to the municipality, and that the identity of the Black community is as diverse as each person. And whereas, during Black History Month, community celebrations will focus on the achievements, history, wellness, and the inclusiveness of the wide diversity of the Black community. Now therefore be it resolved by the Anchorage Assembly that February 2022 shall be recognized and celebrated in the municipality of Anchorage as Black History Month, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this first day of February 2022.
Yes, Black History Month. I'm excited. I am so excited. I am excited. Let me tell you, I'm excited. I'm thankful. First of all, let me identify myself. I'm Celeste Hodge Groudon. I am the president and CEO of the Alaska Black Caucus. We're a nonprofit organization that champions the lives of Black and BIPOC communities in 4 core areas: health, economics, justice, and education. I'm so thankful for this resolution. I truly am. This resolution means a lot to our community. It recognizes the importance of Black History Month and the significant accomplishments of Black people. Unfortunately, February is one of the shortest, actually the shortest month. Sometimes we get 29 days on a leap year. But the good news is we don't wait till February to pay tribute, to share our accomplishments, to do good things. We do it 365 days out of the year. February is a time for us to celebrate. Yes. Celebrate. Yes.
full of the faith that God has brought us. Sing a song full of the faith that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day. All right, all right. Thank you so very much. And as we close out tonight, the song that they opened up with when they were standing in the back and coming down, lift every voice and sing, is known as the National Negro Anthem, which was actually written by James Weldon Johnson, and his brother Rosamond Johnson set it to music, and it was sung in honoring President Abraham Lincoln's birthday, actually at a school in Jacksonville, Florida. And these little African-American boys and girls were singing this song. African-American culture said, let's make this our national Negro anthem. So we sing it every year during the month of February. We invite you to stand when we're singing the song to acknowledge the history of African Americans. But where do we go from here, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and we just celebrated him last month. Did you know that his name actually reigns from Martin Luther, who was a German theologian, marked the 92 Theses on the wall. His father visited there. His father's name was Michael King. He was so impressed with Martin Luther that he came back to Atlanta, Georgia, changed the name himself to Martin Luther King Sr. and his son, Martin Luther King Jr. That's where the origin of his name came from. What do? We continue to read books such as the Project 1619 by Dr. Nicole Jones. We read what a Caucasian woman coined the term white privilege. And we look at what did Peggy McIntosh really mean. She meant the importance of looking at racism, sexism, and classism. And it's time that we as a people come together on this Denali land, as Celeste Hart said. The theme this year is about black wellness and health. In order to be healed and made whole again is when we come together as a people with whatever you believe, with however you think. And as Jonathan Blayton said this morning on Whoopi Goldberg, who made a mistake in saying that the Holocaust was not about race, and she apologized and had him on TV this morning talking about the importance of how we have to acknowledge our mistakes. Name it, call it out, and then take action and do something about it so that we all can be recognized as people created in a higher power and a higher image. Thank you so much for recognizing African American History Month, recognizing the people of dance, recognizing Mrs. Celeste Hodge, the founder and director of the Alaska Black Caucus, and recognizing sororities and fraternities of African descent in Anchorage, Alaska. And those were strong women that wore the pearls around their necks and marched in 1913 during the women's suffrage movement. Shalom, shalom. Thank you.
Next, we have before us item 10F2, which was a laid on the table item, unnumbered AIM X-2022, conforming changes to the 2022 Municipality of Anchorage Legislative Program. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Or move to accept, I'm sorry.
Accept. Yeah.
Motion to accept has been made by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Weddleton, you pull this item?
Yeah, thanks. I had some time to go through it, and it seems reasonable. I guess if there's this confirmation from Mr. Dunbar and Zolotom Rivera, I guess that they'd gone through this and they're comfortable with this.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, Ms. Zalto and I did speak with the administration about this. I will say there was another issue that came up that I can't tell if it is absorbed into here, but I think that they proposed another solution. So from Mr. Wilbanks, we had spoken about how we had to correct the table of contents, and we got an email back on that. Is that in here, or I know you'd sent an email that we got from the clerk that said we intended to do it.
Yes, through the chair, it is in here on page number 2, lines number 5 through 9. So that addresses both the table of contents, changing it, as well as addressing the title above on page 6.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate the administration's efforts in getting our amendments to conform and sort of the will of the body expressed in this document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Weddleton, did you have any follow-up?
No, that's fine. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to accept unnumbered AIM XXX-2022.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotel?
Yes.
The motion to accept passes 10-0. We now have before us item 10G5, ordinance number AO 2022-27, an ordinance adopting the Our Downtown Anchorage Downtown District Plan 2021 as an element of the comprehensive plan and amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, Land Use Planning.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This is an item for introduction. Mr. Constant, you pulled this item?
Yes, thank you. The code requires a 21-day time period before it can be heard after it's put onto the agenda. So we need to set the public hearing date for the next meeting, 3/1/2022. Or wait, it is 3/1, yeah. And wait, hold on. I'm getting hand gestures from Mr. Weddleton. I would like to have it.
Mr. Weddleton's in the queue. Go ahead, Mr. Weddleton.
I think 3:15.
Okay, 3:15.
And that was okayed by the administration.
I think it was. That'll give time for it to be heard in the committee.
There's a lot in here.
Yeah, there's a lot. So, okay, for 3:15, I seem to remember that number, but I just looked at the calendar. So, and with that, I would make a motion to introduce.
Second.
Third.
Thank you.
So item 10G5 has been introduced by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Weddleton, and a third by Mr. Rivera, with a public hearing date of March 15, 2022 set. That concludes our consent agenda. We're going to go ahead and proceed with the items in Section 15, quasi-judicial or administrative matters and special orders. The next items on the agenda involve applications for a liquor or marijuana license and/or a special land use permit for alcohol or marijuana. The process to review these items is different than the Assembly's legislative role because these are administrative or quasi-judicial hearings and require the Assembly to be impartial, refrain from ex parte communications, except in liquor license applications, and make a decision based only on the record before us and testimony today. We now have before us item 15A, and I will note that there is also item 15A2 with an S version that was laid on the table earlier this evening. Resolution number AR 2022-29, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcohol special land use permit for beverage dispensary tourism use and license number 6015 for AKQOZB LLC DBA Aloft Anchorage Midtown in the B3 General Business District.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony on this item is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live. And you will have 3 minutes, and please address the item before.
Niall Sherwood Williams, District 3. In regards to 2022-31, I had a couple of concerns for the body. I'd like to ask first through the chair, considering this has a zip code of 99577, I'd like to ask why yourself and through the chair, Member Constant, put this forward. and not the members from Eagle River. Secondly, a couple of things that I noticed, if you'll flip to what would be page 7 in your packet, marked 2 of 4 on the bottom of Form AB 17. You'll see Danielle Jensen on the second box of name of official, treasurer, X'd out. I don't see any initials next to that, as is typical for a legal document. Secondly, there's a cross out for Marissa, modifying her last name to a hyphenated last name. So I'd like for you to remember the name Jensen, and please continue to flip forward in your packet to the next Form AB 17, marked page 4 of 4. This is the notarized copy. You will see Richard Todd, who is the official licensee here. Then if you flip over to the next page, you'll look at the
Quick point of order. Would you stop this time briefly?
Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Mr. Williams, I believe you are reading off of item 15B.
Am I reading the wrong one, Member Constant?
15A.
15A. Well, I might need to defer to just wait to B, because I didn't read A yet.
What did he say? Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Ms. Camacho, I believe we have one person signed up for phone testimony.
GL Properties is Anton. Hello?
Hi, this is Suzanne LaFrance with the Anchorage Assembly.
Oh, hello, Ms. LaFrance. How are you?
Good, thank you. And I understand you were signed up for public testimony on item 15A, resolution number AR 2022-29.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Great. If you would just state your name for the record and your community council or the area of the municipality in which you live, you will have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. So my name is Anton Villacorta. I live in Sand Lake West, and I'm also part of the Midtown Community, where this where the hotel is opening. It's the Loft. It's a Marriott property, and we're applying for a liquor license to serve alcohol in the hotel. That's it. Are there any questions about the application that I could answer?
Thank you, sir. We do not typically answer questions during public testimony unless, are you complete? Are you done with your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I do have a member in the queue for you, Mr. Weddleton.
Well, is the person on the phone a representative for the business?
Yes, sir, for the hotel. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
I'm the owner's representative.
Okay, so yes, the gentleman on the phone is a representative of the business, and I don't know if you wanted to ask a question now, or go ahead, Mr. Weddle.
Would now be okay, or you want to wait to close the public hearing? It's your choice.
I think it's okay now, just because we have some difficulty getting folks back on, so if you want to go ahead.
Sure. So I don't know that this is wrong, but it's a little unusual on this one to see, looking at the map, or I guess the sketch of the building, and the amount of space that is covered by, so a special land use permit is not necessarily a liquor license. Would one liquor license cover all this area that's outlined in red? I was just surprised that there's an office space, it's just a lot of area. And it just seems unusual for what we typically see.
Oh, I see. Yes, so it is our intention to serve alcohol in the meeting rooms for special occasions, but generally there's a smaller bar area. And the reason why the area is so large is driven by requests from the alcohol board, the state alcohol board, and they required us to, the way to draw the contiguous area, we needed to add all this extra square footage, for example, like storage rooms. It took up part of the more of the lobby than we anticipated, but it's largely because of how they drew the, or how they required us to draw the lines. Really, the space should be where we can or where we intend to serve alcohol will be possibly 2/3 to half of what you see in red.
Okay, thanks. So I may have a question for staff once we get through this.
Okay.
Okay, when we get to the debate portion, if you want to hold your question, then Mr. Weddleton.
Okay, can he stay on the line, or do you?
We may have to
It may not be necessary.
call him back. Okay, if necessary, we will then.
All right,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weddleton, and thank you for your participation.
You're welcome.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony on this item is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve has been made by Mr. Rivera and seconded by Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Weddleton?
So this is for a special land use permit. So I might be looking at this sketch with the red lines, and I think it might be irrelevant. Because, is Ms. Gettig here? Or someone from planning?
I am texting as we speak, Mr. Weddleton. I was 2 minutes ahead of you, and I haven't gotten a response yet.
Okay, because I think a special land use permit would apply to the entire property. So I don't know that this sketch, maybe I'm getting distracted by this sketch, because it would not, the special land use permit wouldn't be just this area outlined in red. I think it goes with the whole property. And then at some point they come back and they get a liquor license, which would apply for whatever activity they might do. That's my understanding. And as always, a yes, John, you're correct is nice, but just in case.
And while the administration is working to get someone from staff online, I want to note that or confirm with the movers that the S version was moved. Yes?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. And we are just standing by here for folks on the line to see if we can get someone from staff available to answer Mr. Weddleton's questions.
Okay, and just to clarify, so I was seeing special land use permit, but this also includes a license. So the license covers that area. So that's why we have that sketch. Okay. Do you want to move on, or would you?
Ms. Domboski?
Mr. Whitfield is going to be joining us here in just a few minutes, but he's not on the line quite yet.
Okay, thank you.
I hate to hold everything up.
So we'll go ahead and move on to 15B and then come back to this one. We now have before us item 15B, resolution number AR 2022-31, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding the renewal of recreational site seasonal liquor license number 4850 for Anchorage Ski Club, Inc., DBA Arctic Valley Ski Club.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony on this item is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Please come forward, state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
Niall Sherwood Williams. I do apologize to members of the public for having the order wrong there. But again, I'd like for, if you would flip to the license details for the 501c3. You will see that Daniel Jensen is listed as the agent name, the same individual who was crossed off as treasurer previously in the packet. If you continue to fast forward in the packet, this will be Form 08-446, revised 7/25/17. D, nonprofit change of officials. And you will again see Daniel Jensen listed as treasurer there. So is he treasurer or is he not? That's one of my big concerns. And I'm not sure as to being able to list someone on a nonprofit and then being able to get a liquor license that would gain profit. So I'm sure as that's why they excluded him off that portion of the paperwork, possibly. Flipping back to the assemblies part of this will be page 2. We can see that certification on line 18, certification from the state fire marshal has not been received. And that's a finding of the municipal clerk. Line 29, certification from the state fire marshal has been received. The Anchorage Assembly resolves. So is that by your decree that the state fire marshal approved this, or was it actually approved? If so, on what date? Where's the certification through the chair to the clerk? I'd like for that to be produced to the people. The signed copy of the form from the state fire marshal that says it's been approved. Because that will prove that you're just not rubber stamping these liquor licenses and moving them forward. And again, I'd like to ask the body why the members from Eagle River are not putting this forward and why the chair and vice chair are putting this forward. That's all.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony on this item is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
A motion to approve has been made by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Rivera. Mr. Weddleton?
I support this. I just want to make clear to people who might be listening is that the city does not issue liquor licenses. That's a state thing, and we can comment on them. And essentially what we do here is some we waive protests and we say, yeah, we're good with it. In some cases where there might be some aspect that isn't completed yet, we will have a conditional protest and we let the clerk have the role of letting the state licensing authority know that everything's good once she gets or he gets the report. So once the state fire marshal certifies it, the clerk will know and will let AMCO know that we're okay with it. So one of the speakers had some questions on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, and the other question that was raised was why is the chair and the vice chair listed? Previously, it was the chairs of the Public Safety Committee, but it's been decided that it's better form to have it the chair and the vice chair of the assembly. It has nothing to do with anything other than ministerial proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to approve AR 2022-31.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotow?
Yes.
The motion to approve item 15B passes 10-0. We will now return back to item 15A. Ms. Demboski, do we have Mr. Whitfield on the line?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I guess we have a motion to approve. I think I'll just get some answers later. I don't know that it'd be something to hold this up. I'm just curious to me because it's a little bit different. Not that I think it's wrong. I just had some questions. So I'll call Mr. Whitfield tomorrow.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, I apologize. Staff isn't available. I assure you it will not happen again.
Thank you, Ms. Demboski. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to approve AR 2022-29. S.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotow?
Yes.
The motion to approve item 15A passes 10-0. We have one item left on our agenda, and before I read that item, I want to note that it's under executive session, and the idea is that we may be able to take this up during our regularly scheduled dinner break in an effort to get through the agenda faster. So I will go ahead and read the item. The clerk has advised me, and I overlooked this piece, that we would need a motion to change the order of the day to take up item 18A before final audience participation and assembly comments.
So moved. Second.
Was that you, Chris? Okay, can you state your motion?
The motion is to change the order of the day to take up item 18A presently.
Moved by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Rivera. Mr. Dunbar?
Madam Chair, I was just wondering if we should consider, there are no other action items tonight, I don't believe. If we were to take final audience participation now, folks could go home and we could do our executive session and then we could leave as well. I guess there would be one final decision at the end regarding the tapes that folks could hang around for, but for those who might want to do their final participation now and then not wait for us to take our executive session, that might, I don't know, that might be better for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, I think I'm persuaded.
Do you want to withdraw the motion then?
I don't know if I withdraw the motion or we just vote. Mr. Rivera, thoughts?
I'm fine with withdrawing.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion to change the order of the day has been withdrawn with a preference stated for moving into final audience participation now, so that when we come back after executive session, the public doesn't have to wait around to give comments. So we'll go now to final audience participation. As a reminder, if you spoke during the initial audience participation, you cannot speak again during this final audience participation. For audience participation, comments to the assembly or the chair, you will have 3 minutes to speak, and personal attacks are not appropriate. In addition, audience members are asked to avoid clapping or other disruptions during audience participation. Last, during audience participation, assembly members generally do not answer questions or respond to comments. We may talk to you offline during a break or after the meeting to address any questions you have. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
Hello, my name is Skylar King-Strang and I am from East Anchorage. I'm here to speak today not on a specific policy, but rather as a general sentiment to the Assembly, to the administration, and to the police department. With the consideration on the state level of David Eastman and general questions as to his ties to a seditionist organization, I began looking into the prevalence of white nationalism and neo-Nazi presence in Anchorage and Alaska as a whole, and I wanted to present some of that to you today. We've got the David Eastman issue. Last year when we had the swastika stickers going up around town, we found that that was also a local Anchorageite. We had Matthias Chakotay, who was a former Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Division for the state, who has sent out a variety of various phobic comments and was a member of a Mormon white nationalist group. Some of you may be aware of Brett Manis, who is the Alaskan godfather of metal, who's been charged with a variety of crimes and was also a promoter for the Daily Stormer Book Club, which is a neo-Nazi organization. We were the birthplace of Baked Alaska, who is known to rub elbows with Richard Spencer and the Daily Stormer owner, Andrew Anglin. He's also been known for defacing a Hanukkah display in Arizona and storming the Capitol on January 6th. We are the birthplace of Kevin Alfred Storm, who is a white nationalist neo-Nazi Holocaust denier, white separatist, and associate editor of the National Vanguard. This is just to establish basically a precedent that kind of informs some of the news articles that I see on a regular basis in our city, including when we had the scandal about the Third Reich and Fuhrer license plates, when the 4-banner display outside the Performing Arts Center The black part was removed from Black Lives Matter, et cetera, et cetera. In the sake of time, I really want to just put this out there as a plea to the administration to make sure that when we're potentially putting people into, I don't have any specific people that I'm concerned about in your administration, but going forward, if there's going to be appointments to do deep research checks, because we do not want people like this to be gaining any sort of position of power, and to the police department to please be vetting applicants who may want to become police for history of such sentiment, because white nationalists and neo-Nazis will get into police departments in order to learn their tactics and then teach them to other groups. And then to the board, just to be making sure that any policy decisions that are made, or to the assembly, that any policy decisions that are made are really looked through and come through to make sure that there are not disproportionate effects on minority communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Are there any other members of the public who wish to participate? Welcome. Please state your name for the record, your community council, or the area of the municipality in which you live.
My name is Joseph Nakoma Brooks. I don't know my district or council reference. I live in West Anchorage on former Caucus Naval Substation, westerly Anchorage. The municipality has been a key factor into the growth of civilization and the incorporation of July 4th, 1993 of the dual flags arisen at Delaney Park Strip. We've seen many festive occurrences happen, and we've seen many tragedies occur while under legislative body occurrences of the municipality. When we had to scrap our water source in 2015 to tend to the dead that the municipality could not fend off for our general populaces of the United States citizens, we had to branch to the Department of Defense military as opposed to conjugating with the municipality's ordinance of, I believe, an overthrown legislative and executive branch government of the Trump administration, of the judicial branches operating syndicacies of martial law. Since the municipality has incorporated to Babylon Isla of an ancient Babylonian empire from 134 years ago, I was the first child born on this island in the intermission of nobody living in this capital for 92 years. The municipalities contributed to crafting society in the fascism of Christianity and passed on the tradition of beliefs of language arts skills to me, and we don't know how to solve the ideology of scrapping the glacial remnants of the water source to a fuel to tend to the opposition dead piles all across the state. However, we have recently, through the Navy SEAL Blue Angels program, cold fission fusion, a new glacier in existence that may be harnessed by the Army Corps of Engineers this previous summer solstice occurrence, when we can hold a steady flare source to harness it to the ground supply reservoirs to further maybe make municipal citizens of the world, whenever they occur on this side of the planet, more formidable with natural resources abundant and available to them where they can occur peacefully. Amen.
Thank you for your participation. Are there any other members of the public who wish to participate? Seeing no one else, we will move on next to assembly comments. I will start with Mr. Weddleton.
No comments, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Allard?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Mr. Peterson, any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No comment.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Rivera?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief comment. I was hoping to make this when we had the Black History Month resolution before us, but the folks had left the room. So I'll just go ahead and state this onto the record now and hope that they will be able to listen to this later. I really appreciated that presentation that we got, and hopefully that's something that we can do more of, whether it's Latino History Month or any of those other celebrations that we have before us. I think it's really important as we think about Black history in Anchorage that we recognize that there is a long and great history here in Anchorage. We recognize the progress that we've made, recognize the struggles that have happened in Anchorage and the work yet to be done. And I just wanted to highlight and raise two examples. One that's been brought to us today, work on the body-worn cameras. As anyone knows, Celeste and the Alaska Black Caucus, body-worn cameras has been a priority issue for them for quite a while. So I'm sure, the day that policy is completed and our officers are wearing body-worn cameras out on the streets, there will be a celebration by the Alaska Black Caucus, because that is a priority for them. Also just want to highlight some of the work that I understand has been done in the, whatever it's named now, whether it's the Anchorage Health Department Commission or the Health and Human Services Commission, whatever the current name is. But as I understand it, they have been working on some type of resolution to declare racism as a public health crisis. And so I really appreciate that work and hope to see that resolution before us at some point. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No further comments.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Constant?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Zelatel, any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No comments tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Zelatel. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No comments this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No comments this evening. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Verdia. With that, we now have before us item 18A, appeal of decision exempting certain assembly records or information from disclosure, request for information from Russell Biggs, number 2021-11. I will now turn to Mr. Gates. Mr. Gates?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I give a little background here and lay a foundation of why we're going to an executive session. So one way of background, Mr. Russell Biggs submitted a records request, as the chair mentioned, number 2021-11, for records in the Assembly branch. Records were gathered and reviewed and some information redacted or withheld as confidential or privileged and then released to Mr. Briggs. Some in July and the last set of records, December 17th, 2021. On January 13th, Mr. Biggs requested an appeal. In his email message, he said, dated, quote, on December 17th, I was informed that certain documents I had requested under state law and the Anchorage Municipal Code were exempt from disclosure based on the attorney-client and attorney-work product privilege. A copy of this denial of access to public records is attached. No additional identifying information was provided, although some of the records appeared to be emails to a person named Casey Pick. I believe this improperly denies portions of my request for inspection of public records. Pursuant to AMC 39060B, I'm asserting my rights to an automatic appeal of this action. Please provide a written reply within 7 working days. The basis for this appeal includes the following. Number one, no slips were provided to me as required by AMC 39060A. And number two, I don't believe Casey Pick is an attorney, so emails to him should not be privileged. Number three, many of the redactions include to and from information, so I cannot tell if they are actually communications with an attorney. Number four, the applicable municipal law on attorney-client privileges is AMC 39040A, which only applies to legal questions concerning pending or actual litigation. Number five, I asked for communications referencing specific names and an email address. I find it hard to believe an email mentioning any of these is a communication for the purpose of providing legal advice. And number six, AMC 39010 adopts a public policy of favoring full disclosure, and I believe any claim of privilege as to these specific records deviates from this policy by making privilege claims on an overly broad basis, unquote. That's Mr. Biggs' request for the appeal. After this email, Assembly Counsel's office prepared and sent the slip required by 39068 and Mr. Biggs. I recommend the Assembly meet in executive session to consider the remaining points. The main question is whether information withheld from the records released to him should be disclosed. Excuse me. In our Open Meetings Act and also in our municipal code, we have certain provisions about executive session. The Assembly may go into an executive session excluding members of the public, during which the body considers but takes no action on, except to give direction to an attorney or labor negotiator regarding a specific legal matter or pending labor negotiations. Only specific subjects as permitted by statute and code, and those include matters which by law, municipal charter or ordinance are required to be confidential, or matters involving consideration of government records that by law are not subject to public disclosure. These exceptions shall be construed narrowly to avoid exemptions from open meetings requirements. And we also have similarly in our municipal code in chapter 230, the similar grounds for being able to go into executive session. So in this matter, under 18A, Mr. Biggs has requested public records received hundreds of pages. A good portion was redacted or withheld as we identified. Mr. Biggs' appeal objects to that information being withheld because these matters under consideration relate to the confidentiality of records under attorney-client privilege and by law not subject to public disclosure. I recommend the chair ask for a motion to convene an executive session to discuss this appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. At this time, I will ask the body if there is a motion.
So moved to enter executive session.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to enter into executive session and seconded by Mr. Rivera. Seeking unanimous consent.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Domboski?
before you go into executive session, it's been the historically, the mayor gets to participate in every assembly meeting to its fullest as prescribed by charter. So we want to put on the record that the mayor intends to attend this executive session.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Seeking unanimous consent to the motion to go into executive session. Seeing no opposition, the motion to move into executive session passes unanimously. So we will now reconvene to the conference room upstairs where we normally have dinner. We are back on the record after the executive session. And now the body needs to address the tapes from the executive session. The chair makes a recommendation that the tapes will be kept confidential with no release date. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
A motion has been made to keep the tapes confidential with no release date by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Rivera. Mr. Weddleton?
You know, I'm puzzled on that. I think on this case, so we have an appeal to us that could then go to Superior Court. Is there a time limit on appealing to Superior Court? Because I think our more typical thing is to say we release them sometime after the final judgment would have been made by any superior body, and I'd be more comfortable with that.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Gates, would you be able to address the question concerning the release of the tapes and whether or not a date should be attached, given that this issue could go forward to Superior Court?
It's sometimes done that way, where the release date is set at a 3-month or 6 months after all applicable potential appeal periods have run or passed. I mean, you see that sometimes when it's a considered litigation and records shouldn't be released until all of that is done in a time period after. I mean, it's not unheard of, is all I'm saying. You do that. You could stay with the original motion.
Mr. Weddleton?
Can I make that motion on top of the other one and just move that we release the tapes 3 months after all appeal options are passed?
Perhaps the mover and the seconder would consider withdrawing their motion. Otherwise, we would need to go through and amend. Either is fine.
I'm waiting for them to withdraw. Okay, that's fine. So how would I amend that? I'm not quite sure how I would amend that. What would be the amendment? To amend that, I'd like to move to amend that motion so that the tapes will be held until 3 months after all appeals have passed their
Second.
time.
A motion to amend has been made by Mr. Weddleton to release the tapes 3 months after any appeals are completed. It's been seconded by Ms. Allard.
I think it would be any appeal periods. I think that was the key. Like if he doesn't appeal within whatever the deadline would be, we'd have 3 months.
So 3 months after the appeal period.
3 months after all appeal periods have passed. I think that's Mr. Gates' wording. That's my intent.
Mr. Weddleton, do you want to speak to it?
Well, yeah, I just feel funny not releasing them forever. I don't know that we've done that. I don't know that anything was said that couldn't be revealed.
And Mr. Gates?
Thank you. I have the municipal code up in front of me now, and the subsection about release dates of executive session recordings is in 230-036C. And so this is probably helpful. C1 is about if the session concerns pending litigation, the release date shall be when all causes of action have been resolved by final judgment or when further claims arising from the matter are otherwise barred. And it sounds like Mr. Watterson would like to apply that language. There's also in subsection E, recordings or minutes shall be available only to assembly members. Oh wait, excuse me. C4 is if the session concerns matters which tend to defame or injure the reputation of persons, the assembly may set a release date or may provide that no release shall occur. So having no release date's not unheard of, and we have done that in the past while I've been serving the body.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Ms. Zalatel?
Thank you. I'd like clarification from the mover if he meant the first thing that Mr. Gates indicated as in code, because as stated, it's for, it was unclear and it seemed like it would be shorter than what was stated by Mr. Gates in code, but if what he intends is what Mr. Gates provided for in that first part of code, then that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Gates?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. That was to Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, to
if
Mr.
that was his intent, was to make his motion consistent with that first section of code as to the timeline for the appeals running.
Understood. Mr. Weddleton?
That was my intent. I'm sorry, I totally forgot the wording on that part of code, but the intent would be perhaps better stated, not until 3 months after all appeal periods have passed, but not until 3 months after all causes of action no longer apply. I think that was the wording in code.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Zalatel, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. So generally speaking, the conversation that was had did in fact delve into some areas of privilege. I recognize that those weren't areas of privilege other members of the body might have taken advantage of or needed, but the conversation definitely talked about content areas that were not submitted in the records request and would not otherwise be submitted in the records request. And so I feel like a vote on this item would in fact compromise my privilege with my attorney, and I ask you to vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regards to Mr. Constant's comment, I just want to say I disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Before we move to a vote, I just want to do a quick sound check to make sure. I know we have Ms. Zalatel on. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Peterson, are you on the line?
I certainly am.
Ms. Quinn Davidson, are you on the line?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to amend the main motion so that the tapes will be held until 3 months after all causes of action no longer apply.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zalatel?
No.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
No.
The amendment fails 4-7. We are now back on the main motion as amended. Not amended, as not amended. Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to keep executive session tapes confidential with no release date.
Thank you. I saw that. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zalatel?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
The motion passes 9-2. While the body was in executive session, a motion was made and approved unanimously to give direction to legal counsel. And this was the only action taken during executive session. What is the will of the body?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Constant?
Make a motion to approve the appeal with a recommendation to vote no.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to approve the appeal with a no vote urged. It has been seconded by Mr. Rivera. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I call the question.
What? Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to call the question and seconded by Mr. Rivera. Members may proceed to vote on the motion to call the question.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotel?
No.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
The motion to call the question fails 7-4. Mr. Weddleton?
Yeah, I'd oppose. And I hope we'd vote against this and then I guess I'll make a motion then to postpone it till a future meeting, maybe our April 12th meeting, and allow the, what, I'm sorry, what haven't done anything
That's okay.
second yet.
Yeah.
No, I'd like to, I think we should, I know it's not required, but a citizen has a request, would like to speak to us on it. It's important. Give him an opportunity, could be 5 minutes for he and his attorney to make his pitch that's in his letter. It would also give time for the mayor to get some of the questions he had answered. There's no rush on this at this point. So I think it's more fair to the citizen, more fair to the mayor, and gets us the same point, but we just do it in a month. So I urge a no vote on this.
So Mr. Weddleton, you have made a motion to postpone to the meeting of April 12th.
Can I do that and override the first motion? Is that what we're doing? Because that's my motion then. I don't know if I'm allowed.
The motion to approve is the main motion on the floor, and I believe the motion to postpone is subsidiary, so yes, you can do that, and I heard it was seconded by Ms. Allard. And is the date of April 12, is that the date?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Zolotel, on the motion to postpone?
No, thank you. Back on the main motion.
Thank you, Ms. Zolotel. Mr. Constant?
Urge a no vote.
Ms. Allard?
Thank you. We did have a citizen in the community that really does want to speak on this, and since it's about them and they were unable to be here tonight due to short notice, 14 hours, and the fact that they're out of country, I really do believe that we should do this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to postpone this item to the meeting of April 12.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotel?
No.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
No.
The motion to postpone fails 4-7. We are now back on the main motion. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the main motion, the reason I didn't vote to call the question is I think the wrong motion has been made. I guess maybe the maker of the motion urging the no vote can explain how that takes into account the advice or the direction given to legal counsel, because it would seem to me that denying the appeal would not require anything further than just stating a denial. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Zolotel. Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
I don't disagree with you. I believe that the statement that was put in the record was that counsel was given direction. And for my part, I would say that that portion of the appeal was granted because of that motion at that time. And so really, the motion that's on the floor is strictly relating to the items remaining that were not addressed in the previous conversation. And so I wish I would have been able to chat with you on that, because I agree in a sense, because the record isn't exactly clear because of the limits of the executive session process. And so I would argue that this motion is still germane and proper, because before this, it was stated into the record that council was given direction that will be communicated to the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Any follow-up, Ms. Zalatel?
Yes. So I see what Mr. Constant's saying. I'm just thinking about if it's a motion to approve urging a no vote, but consistent with the advice given to council, that seems to potentially drive those two things directly into conflict. I'm wondering if the motion isn't slightly different, although I don't have it yet. But if the record is at least clear that that's the intent and that's the actual direction and what the outcome will be, maybe that is the only way to get there. So I appreciate the response, Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, it seems to me that the motion should be to approve the appeal in part, because that's what we did. So, Mr. Gates, would that be a better motion?
So, Madam Chair, if I might jump in before, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Wilton. The direction is more of a remand than approval of part. I think that your motion would be clear if it were along the lines of, except for as otherwise directed to the attorney, the appeal was granted, and encouraging a no vote on the remainder of it.
Could you repeat that?
Accept.
I'll try. I think the motion would make sense that, except as remanded by direction given to council, the appeal is granted and encouraging a no vote. And so that will leave intact the portion for which direction was provided.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Any follow-up, Mr. Weddleton?
One more. So we would accept for as remanded by directions to council, the appeal is, I missed those last few words.
Except for as remanded by direction to council, the appeal is granted and encouraging a no vote on that remainder.
Okay. So I wonder if Mr. Constant would consider changing this motion.
That's fine. The clerk is capturing it quickly, and she'll have it up on the board.
And does the second agree?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera? So the revised motion is up. Mr. Weddleton, did you have any other follow-up?
Well, now I'm confused on how I would vote, because I think we should postpone, so I would have said no. Now I go vote yes, but vote no is where, I'm not quite sure. Okay, thanks. I'm going to scratch my head.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to create more challenge here. The problem that I have with this is that if the motion is to approve the appeal except for the portion that was remanded through direction to council, then it indicates that the exception portion was denied to me. And that's the problem with this. Okay. So I understand that there's likely a legal reason why our motion is in the affirmative, but it's creating a real challenging language situation, and it's making it really unclear both to us and the public what we're trying to do. And so I'm not going to make a new motion. I'm going to urge And I guess there's a question to Mr. Gates. Is there a problem with saying, with the exception of the portion that was remanded through direction to council, I move to deny? And I'd like to hear an answer as to why that is problematic in this case.
I'm not exactly clear on the question, except that you understood it's a confusing motion.
I'll restate it. So the question is there a problem with changing the language of this motion so that it reads, move to deny with the exception of the portion that was remanded through direction to council? So that the motion is actually to deny the appeal and that it's noted with the exception of the parts that were remanded to council. Is there a problem with the language of that motion because it's not in the affirmative as was recommended?
I think in general that motions are worded in the affirmative, and that's a general practice of parliamentary procedure, but we do see from time to time motions worded as you are suggesting in the negative. Do I see a problem? Not generally. Sometimes you tailor things to the circumstances before you that don't fit general practice, but certainly it's a difficult situation to address in one motion.
Okay. Well, thank you for the answer. I'm not encouraging us to change it. I just wanted to make sure I had clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. Since I hopefully convinced one member to change their vote, I'm going to make the motion one more time to call the question.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to call the question and seconded by Mr. Rivera.
Madam Chair, I couldn't hear the underlying motion and the last motion. I'm sorry, I just need them restated, please.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. The motion on the floor, one moment, and I will read what's on the screen. The motion on the floor is to approve the appeal except for the portion that was remanded through direction to council. And a motion has been made by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Rivera to call the question on that motion.
Thank you.
Members may proceed to vote on the motion to call the question.
Wait, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but can you put that wording back up there? Because I just don't think...
And Mr. Weddleton, calling the question, the motion to call the question
we're voting on calling
isn't
the question.
debatable.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were on the item. Sorry.
Members may proceed to vote on the motion to call the question.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotel?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
The motion to call the question passes 8-3. Members may proceed to vote on the main motion.
Point of order.
Mr.
Sorry,
Weddleton,
I just think the way it's so... Okay, so a no vote means the appeal is denied except for the things we said to do in executive session, right? And that's pretty clear. What does a yes vote do? A yes vote says you approve the appeal except for that portion that was remanded. So it's not like an either or. That's an extremely different thing than, I mean, that makes no sense. A yes vote makes no sense.
thank you, Mr. Weddleton.
Can we vote on this?
So yours is a procedural question, and I will go to Mr. Gates. The question has been called. However, I believe with an interruptible motion, a procedural question is permissible.
Give me a moment. Thank you for that pause. To me, the yes vote would approve the appeal, right? And the relief that Mr. Biggs seems to ask for, it's a little vague, but it's to disclose information that was redacted or withheld, but to what extent isn't clear, but his claims are that in his statements, the privileges were applied overly broadly, on an overly broad basis, and further information. But that's I think a yes vote would mean, though, providing that information that was redacted or withheld on a much narrower basis. So I don't know how far that goes, but.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Okay, so members may proceed to vote on the motion to approve the appeal, except for the portion that was remanded through direction to council.
Mr. Peterson?
Madam
No.
Chair, point of order.
What is your procedural question, Ms. Allard?
I
Or
don't-
what rule do you believe has been broken?
Well, I guess it's a point of information then, because I'm still not clear on what Mr. Gates said, because I'm with Mr. Weddleton here. That's not a clear vote.
Ms. Allard, the question has been called and debate has stopped. I entertained a point of information to address the procedural question, and we're in the middle of the vote. So Mr. Gates has already addressed the procedural question.
He said think. He didn't actually clarify anything.
Ms. Zolotel?
I vote no.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
No.
Mr. Weddleton?
Mr. Weddleton?
I cannot vote on this because a no vote means something totally different. It doesn't mean the opposite of a yes vote. A yes vote means you approve the appeal except for what we did in the executive session, which was responsive to the appeal. It's simply the way that's worded. There's no way I can vote on this. I don't know what my options are, but a no doesn't get me there. A yes doesn't get me there because of the way it's worded. The wording simply makes no sense. We're not allowed to do that, but I'm not voting. I'm sorry. Do what? Get within the same place. Okay. This is.
per code, members have a duty to vote, and if members leave, then they don't vote. So one way to not vote is to be absent. The motion fails 0-9.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Kennedy,
move to reconsider.
a motion to reconsider has been made by Ms. Kennedy.
So there's been no second on my motion to reconsider?
There is no second. Seconded by Mr. Weddleton. Go ahead, Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. I think there is a better way to actually ask this question. So I think if we reconsider, I was in the queue before Mr. Constant jumped on the call the question issue, and I think there is a way to put this into better language that will work, that keeps it in the affirmative, and that would be to move to approve the portion of the appeal that was remanded through direction of council. So in other words, I think we can place this in the affirmative and make it very clear as to what we're actually voting for or against if we have the opportunity to reconsider and make that new motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. There are several members in the queue. I will go through the queue. I'm hoping that we can just proceed to a vote on the question to reconsider. Ms. Allard? Ms. Allard?
My system was down. I'm not in queue. It's popping back up.
Okay.
I apologize.
Understood. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
I'm no longer in queue.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to reconsider.
Mr. Peterson?
No.
Ms. Zolotel?
No.
Ms. Quinn Davidson? No. Ms. Allard, may I take your vote by voice?
Yeah, it's not up. Yes.
The motion to reconsider fails 4-7. We are now at adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.